Hello everyone and welcome to Tripp's art class. Today we are going to be practicing inking, getting ready for Inktober coming up. So today we're going to draw an apple with a little cute worm coming out of it to practice drawing, sketching, and then inking. So what I'm going to do something a little bit different is I'm going to be drawing with a blue pencil. It's actually a digital pencil, but it emulates a blue pencil that I sometimes draw with in my sketchbook to go over it with black ink. Now you do not have to use a blue pencil. You might want to just use your regular wooden pencil. Maybe start with your mechanical pencil so you can lightly sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with my blue pencil, and the first thing I'm going to do is draw a circle shape. So I'm going to kind of keep it very simple. And notice what I'm doing is I am drawing very lightly, and I'm sketching a circle. Now I want to make sure I'm drawing super light because these lines are just construction lines. They're going to change. So you should barely be able to see these because they will definitely change here in a moment. So there's my circle. Now what I'm going to do now is start to mold or shape that circle to be more in the shape of an apple. So this is where I talked about before in Tripp's art class about how pencil can be like molding with clay. If you sketch light enough, you can go back and instead of worrying about erasing or making your lines absolutely perfect, you can just think of it as you're sketching. So what I did here is I went down and put a curved line there, and then I'm going to pull this line down and start to put a curved line as well right here. And I'm going to pull this line down as well right here. So now I can take my eraser if I want to and go back and start to erase some of these lines like that. Okay. So this curves down, and then the apple's going to kind of come up right here. Almost kind of like a tooth in a way. Almost kind of looks similar to a tooth. So we'll pull this line here. And we'll keep on molding this apple. Now I don't like how it comes out so much there. It almost kind of looks like a skull. So I'm going to keep on playing with it and molding it. And I think, is this the apple shape I want? Now, apples are not perfect, okay? Not all apples are going to look the same, so it's okay if your apple does not look exactly like this one. Okay, from there I'm going to go ahead and clean up this line a little bit because there's going to be another part of the apple coming from underneath here. So what you can see is you can see a lot of lines that I don't really want, but you can see a darker line that I do want. Now, students that enjoy drawing and students that enjoy art typically really begin to understand this idea of sketching, of not having to make everything perfect. Okay, so we got the shape, the contour line of our apple here. So what I'm going to then do is go ahead and begin to draw an oval right here. And this is going to be the area where the worm comes out of. So this is the hole in the apple. Same thing here. I'm sketching. I didn't just draw it like that. I'm sketching it so I can make it the way I really want it to be, and because it's more relaxing. It's a lot more relaxing when you sketch. And right here we'll go ahead and draw another hole. This will be maybe the hole where the worm first came into. And it'll be an oval as well. Now if you don't like the way your oval is turning out, just go ahead and fix it. You can take your eraser. Oops, you go to my eraser. And you can erase the parts that you don't like. Don't you wish life were like art, where you could just go through and erase the parts that you don't like? Okay. Now here, this is the first time where we're really going to focus on making something three-dimensional. We're going to do that by cleaning up this line a little bit with my eraser. And then I'm going to draw a line that matches the outside, matches this line right there. And that's going to make this apple look more three-dimensional. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to clean this line up. Now, when you want to erase in small areas, this is where you might want to use the eraser on the end of your pencil. You don't want to use it often because it won't last very long, but keep it sharp, okay? So you can get those little areas when you need them, like I just did right there. So here what I'm going to do is do the same thing. Draw a line this way so you can see which way I'm drawing it. That way it shows some dimension. We've been mostly drawing 2-dimension, but we're gonna slowly start to draw in 3-dimension. So there, we have some dimension here where part of the apple has been cut out. So let's move on here. We get to do the fun part. We get to start to draw the worm. So for the worm, we're going to draw another oval, maybe about right here. Same way, sketch lightly. And get that oval the way you want it. Okay, so that oval right there is actually going to be the head of the worm. So now we got to connect it. So what we can do is maybe have a line come here. Maybe it kind of comes down there and maybe swoops around and comes this way into the hole. Let's make it have a little bit more curve though. I can change that line because once again I'm using a pencil. Look at that. And we'll do the same thing here. Have this line come in, nice little curve. Get a little bit fatter right here to show dimension. And then it'll come in, be smaller. Like that. Okay. Now you can change this line if you want to. I mean, we could even make it a little bit like shorter, like that, if you want to. You know, it's up to you how you want it to be. You can change it. It's pencil. That's what's so neat about pencil. You want to maybe have a line, maybe we'll pull this line up right here so his neck's not so big. And this is the crucial part about drawing, is going back and checking your work. Really going back and thinking, you know, what can I make better? What would look better? Does this look good? Would this look better if I did this? Because we don't get it right the first time. We don't. We might get it good the first time, but we don't get it right the first time. Because we're just humans. We make mistakes. So drawing gives us the opportunity to really make it the way we think it should be. Okay. So I'm thinking maybe the worm comes here and maybe the top of the apple kind of comes out here. We'll make that 3-dimensional as well. Okay. So we have that. And let's go ahead and start to put in some detail in the worm. So for the face, we can maybe put, let's see, I'm gonna change this line a little bit right there. A worm's gonna need some eyes. So we can go ahead and put a giant eyeball. Of course, this will be kind of a cartoony looking worm. Okay, and we'll draw another eyeball. Since we're kind of drawing in 3 dimensions on this piece, the other eyeball will be behind, so we're using the technique of overlapping to show dimension or space. And here we can maybe draw this line coming up right here. Maybe that'll be like his mouth. Maybe we can have the worm looking that way. And then we can go ahead and start to put maybe some little marks on the worm. Maybe like that. And we'll keep the worm pretty simple, okay? It'll be pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and erase some of these extra guidelines so they don't confuse me when I actually start to ink. When you're inking, you don't have to worry about all that. You want it just to be kind of natural, so you don't have to think too much about which lines you're going to keep and which ones you're going to get rid of. So let's see. Okay, now I'm going to show you another technique we're going to do here. We're going to add some shading to show a little bit more dimension. We're not going to do anything super fancy, but I'm just going to show some light shading here. Now, thinking of 3 dimensions where this apple would be, where the light would be on this apple, I'm going to go ahead and start to add in some shading. So maybe this area is going to be shaded on the apple. Nothing too much, but just a little bit. And then I'm going to think if the sun's hitting it here, the light's hitting it here, like that. And then this part of the apple is definitely going to be shaded in completely. Now I'm doing this really quickly because we're going to do it in more detail once we get our pen. This is just the initial sketch. Okay, so there is our worm within an apple. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see it a little bit more clearly. And maybe I might just turn it a tad here. There we go. So now is the fun part. We're going to go over this. Now, you might want to do is take your eraser. You don't even have to do it if you did it in blue, but take your eraser and kind of lightly erase so we can barely see it. And then take your black ink pen and we're going to begin to ink. Now, that's what I'm getting right now. I'm getting my black ink pen. I'm using a digital ink pen, one that I created myself. And check it, maybe make it a little bit smaller, make sure you have the right size ink pen, and then this is the fun part. I'm going to begin to ink, and this is the relaxing part. So each little part, I'm just going to go ahead, make sure you really take your time on this. Pay very close attention. This is the part that we don't just quickly sketch. This is the part where we have to really focus and be patient. You're not drawing anything new here. It's the same lines as before. You might be thinking, well, Trip, you're doing it on the computer, that's easier. well, I'm doing it on an iPad Pro, and in a way, there's some parts that are easier, but there's a lot of ways that I would much rather be using traditional ink and pen. The reason why I'm using the iPad Pro is so that everyone can see it very clearly, and they can zoom in on those little areas for you. Digital technology is fun, but there is a learning curve with it. It's fun, but it's not completely natural. Now you might be thinking, Mr. Tripp, I just saw you erase a little bit. I can't erase on mine because I'm using traditional pen, and that is true. You can't erase, but what you can do, here's a little tip, a little trick, is you can get a white pen and kind of use that to work on any of your mistakes. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and add in some lights reflecting here in the pupils of our worm. Maybe I'll add another little spot right there. Maybe there's 2 light sources. Yeah, I like it with just one. And we're gonna move on to the next part. The next part is a little dilemma we're having, is how, I forgot a couple of details here. Let me add those in. Another detail you might be thinking is, or dilemma is, how do we add in that shading? Remember all this shading? I'll go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. See all that shading, all that blue there? How do we shade if we're using pen? And we can't really smear it, that doesn't really work well. So what we do is we do a technique called hatching. Some people call it cross hatching because you can do that as well, but we're going to talk more about just hatching today. And hatching is when you shade just by using lines. You put the lines very close together, things look darker. You put them further apart and they look lighter. At first, this might seem unnatural, but eventually you'll kind of develop your own style for hatching. What hatching is not is making everything perfect. Don't try to make everything perfect because then it will just look weird. So what I'm going to do here is areas where it is shaded normally, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put some light little lines. I'm going to do the same thing with the shaded area right here. Maybe add a few more right here. Now one thing about digital is if there's any mistakes I make, I can just kind of fix that quickly. So I didn't have to be super careful when I did it. And what I can do is even go in some other little areas and think, where else could there be some shading? Maybe right there, maybe right here, maybe even right there. And maybe here, there could be some shading. Even think about the worm, maybe right here we can add some shading. Maybe right here, maybe even right there, you know, you can put in a few little spots. And maybe there's just a little bit right there. Okay. So from there I can get rid of the blue lines and we can kind of stand back here. And what we have here is our apple. Now, after doing that, I noticed this line might be a little bit off, so I'm going to kind of balance it out a little bit. And what we have done is we've inked our drawing with ink pen. So that's it. So remember, we sketch it first very, very loosely. It's kind of like molding with clay. After that, we can take our eraser and lightly erase those pencil lines so we can just barely see an outline. And then we can go back and we can ink it with a pen. Now there's one more thing here that I want you to pay attention to before we're done, and it's our line weights. So we look here, a lot of the lines are a similar weight. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start to add a little bit more weight to some of these. So when we talk about weight, some are going to be thicker, some are going to be thinner. So I'm going to think which lines will look better thicker and which lines will look better thinner. You can easily do this just by kind of going over the lines, and that's going to really add some variety, because we don't want all of our lines to be exactly the same. Now this doesn't apply to cross hatching, don't worry about, or your hatching, don't worry about that. Those should be pretty thin. So you see how on the side of apple it gets a little bit thicker here. And over here on this side of the apple, I want it to be a little bit thicker. So you can kind of see how I did that, and it just kind of makes it pop a little bit more. Maybe right here I can do it as well. A few parts there will be a little bit thicker. Maybe, yeah, I'm happy with that right there. Actually, I kind of want the back of this worm's head to be a little bit thicker to thin. See how it goes thick to thin? And what that does, it just kind of really makes your line work pop a little bit more. Makes it a little bit more interesting. And maybe even here on the top of the eyes, I can go a little bit thicker. Maybe even a little bit more. Almost kind of like the top of the eyes. Okay. So now if I show you the difference, here's our worm with no hatching. Okay, then we go through and we add some hatching, and then we go in and we add some line with variety. What it does is it just makes our artwork pop a little bit more, and it just makes it look a little bit more advanced. So there we go. So thanks for hanging out at Trip's art class, and we will catch you next time.